Welcome everyone to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into something that affects all of us, really, often without us even noticing much. The incredible power, the deep meaning behind names. I mean, usually we pick names because they sound nice, maybe it's a family thing, right? But do we ever really stop and think about what's underneath that? Our sources today suggest that way back, especially in biblical times, a name wasn't just a tag you wore. Nope. It was like a map, almost a prophecy, a real declaration about who you were and maybe who you'd become.
That's absolutely right. And our mission today really is to peel back those layers. We want to explore how names, far from just being simple identifiers, can actually hint at character, maybe even predict a person's path, and definitely mark those huge spiritual turning points in someone's life. We've got some great reflections to look at.
Yeah, and we're going to unpack some really surprising examples. I mean, from this mysterious ancient king whose name basically defined his whole deal, to, regular people whose lives just completely shifted when they got a new name. We even have a story about a modern pastor's own journey with naming, which kind of mirrors these old ideas. So by the end, you might be asking yourself, what's really in my name?
Exactly. And hopefully these stories will challenge how we usually think about names today. Maybe invite you to consider that deeper level, often a spiritual one, of identity that sometimes gets lost in the hustle and bustle. Let's see what we find.
Okay, let's dive right in. Yeah. A perfect place to start is with this really ancient, kind of mysterious figure, Melchizedek. He pops up in the book of Hebrews, chapter 7. And what's so fascinating is how his name, his actual name, tells you so much about him.
It's interesting because it's almost more than just a name. It's like a title or two titles combined. The text says he was king of Salem and he was a priest of the Most High God. But then you look at the Hebrew meanings. Melchizedek itself translates to king of righteousness. And Salem, the place he ruled, that means peace.
Wow. Okay, so king of righteousness and king of peace at the same time. That feels significant. Our sources mention this idea of righteousness and peace being linked, like in Psalm 85. Righteousness and peace kiss each other.
That sounds
beautiful, almost poetic. But what does that really mean for us? Practically, why is that connection so important?
That's a great question. It's definitely more than just nice words. See, righteousness here isn't just about ticking off boxes of being morally good. It's deeper. It's about being right, being aligned with God's will, God's purpose. So the insight is that real lasting peace. It isn't just, no fighting. It's actually a result of living in that right alignment. It flows from it. And our reflections make it clear this isn't about trying to earn brownie points by following old laws perfectly. Galatians actually says that won't work for righteousness. Instead, it points towards this deeper spiritual state, a transformation. The really profound takeaway is that it's through a path like the one Jesus offers, through his redemption, that this true alignment happens. That's when righteousness and peace can actually kiss, as the psalm says. And that lets us experience real peace, first with God, then maybe with others too. Melchizedek, with his name and title, kind of foreshadows all of that. It's quite powerful when you unpack it.
That Melchizedek example really hits home how much meaning can be packed into a name.
Wow. It makes me wonder, though, are there other times, maybe even more dramatic ones, where a name isn't just understood, but it's actually changed, like to mark a massive shift?
Oh, absolutely. That's a key theme. In biblical times, names were incredibly significant. It wasn't like today, where, maybe we just like the sound of a name. Back then, names often reflected who you were, your character, maybe your destiny, or they marked a major spiritual event. Sometimes God himself or Jesus would give someone a new name to signal a totally new identity and purpose. We see some really well-known examples. Think about Jacob becoming Israel. Genesis 32 tells that story, right?
Yeah.
Jacob, his name basically meant supplanter or deceiver, kind of tricky. He wrestles with this divine figure all night, this intense struggle, and afterwards he gets a new name, Israel, which means something like he struggles with God or God contends. It signified a whole new relationship, a new destiny as the father of a people. Wow, yeah. From deceiver to someone who actively engages, even struggles with God. That's a huge identity shift. And it feels like the new name isn't just descriptive, it's almost aspirational. Like, this is who you are now, who you're called to be.
Exactly. Or another big one, Simon becoming Peter. In John chapter 1, Jesus meets Simon. Simon means he who hears, a listener, which is good. But Jesus renames him Peter, which means rock mitzvah. He's basically declaring you are going to be foundational. The church will be built on you. Imagine getting a new name that literally predicts your life's major role.
That's incredible. It really changes how you think about just being called something. It's not just an identifier, it's almost a commission. And our materials share this really personal story, a pastor talking about his own English name. It echoes this ancient idea in a modern way. He first chose spring, like the season, hoping it meant he'd be adaptable, resilient. But later, he felt this pull to change it to Timothy, a name with more direct spiritual weight, partly because his mother and grandmother saw that calling in him. It's interesting, he contrasts this with something pretty common, apparently like in Taiwan, where maybe an English teacher just assigns a name, without necessarily thinking deeply about its meaning or if it fits the person, which is understandable but different. It really makes you wonder. So let me ask you listening, how much thought do you give to your name's meaning or names you pick? Is it just a sound or does it resonate deeper?
And thinking about meaning leads to a really important, almost tricky question. If names carry so much weight, what do we do with a name like Judas? His name, believe it or not, actually means praise.
Okay, wait. Judas means praise. That's jarring, isn't it? Given what comes to mind for most people. Okay. That's a huge contrast. What's the paradox here that our sources dig into?
It absolutely is a paradox. I mean, you hear Judas, and instantly most of us probably think of the disciple, the one who betrayed Jesus, for the 30 pieces of silver, then the tragic end. The name itself has become almost shorthand for betrayal, for shame. But, and this is the crucial twist, Jesus himself was from the tribe of Judah. That's the same root. That means he came from the lineage of King David, a royal line, a respected line. So yeah, on one hand, Judas or Judah represents this praised royal heritage. And on the other hand, it's the ultimate symbol of betrayal. How do you square that? Well, the insight seems to be this. The point isn't really whether the name itself is intrinsically good or bad. The real emphasis, the takeaway, is on how a person lives. Their actions, their choices, their faith lived out. It's about character over the label. The name doesn't guarantee the outcome, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. Your actions can totally redefine what people associate with a name. Okay, let's look at another story then, one that really highlights this idea of action and transformation, maybe regardless of initial perceptions. Zacchaeus. This fantastic story is in Luke chapter 19.
Right, Zacchaeus. The story introduces him, and it's not a flattering picture at first. He's a chief tax collector in Jericho, short guy, and really unpopular. Tax collectors back then, especially working for the Romans, were seen by their own people as traitors, basically, extorting money from fellow Jews.
Yeah, definitely not winning any popularity contests. And the story goes, Jesus is passing through Jericho, big crowd. Zacchaeus, being short, can't see, so what does he do? He climbs a tree, a sycamore tree, which must have looked a bit ridiculous for a wealthy chief tax collector, right? But he was clearly determined just to get a look at Jesus.
And that leads to this amazing moment. Jesus reaches the tree, looks up, and calls him by name. He says, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today.
Which is just incredible. And it raises that question, doesn't it? How did Jesus know his name? Did he have a, ancient name tag? Our sources note the Bible doesn't say, but maybe the how isn't the point. The point is the impact, right? Being seen, being called out personally.
Yeah, exactly. The impact is undeniable, because what happens next is just immediate transformation. Zacchaeus welcomes Jesus, presumably joyfully, into his house, and then he stands up and makes this public declaration. He says he'll give half his possessions to the poor, and anyone he cheated, he'll pay them back 4 times over. That's way beyond what any law required. It was radical repentance, radical restitution right there on the spot. What a turnaround. I mean, his life completely changed in that encounter. And think about the ripple effect. Fairer taxes in Jericho. That helps the whole community. It really shows how being seen, being called by name, by Jesus in this case, sparked this huge spiritual awakening. It wasn't just feeling good, it led to concrete changes in behavior. Shows you, labels people put on you aren't the final word.
So we've looked at names as destiny, names marking transformation, even the paradox where a name's meaning clashes with actions. But if we pull all this together, what's really the most important name you carry? Or maybe the most important way you're identified?
That's the ultimate question, isn't it? Our parents give us names, sure, and they're on our ID or documents, practical labels. But the reflections we looked at suggest the most significant name, the most defining label, is how God sees you, how God calls you. Think about those moments, those affirmations described in Scripture. When God calls someone my dear son or my dear daughter, that deep personal address. Or when Jesus says to his followers, you are my friend, or maybe you are my faithful servant. Well, those aren't just nice words. Our sources suggest those are the moments of highest blessing, the names that confer the deepest significance, the truest identity. It's about relationship.
That's a really powerful thought to maybe land on. It kind of transcends whatever name is on your birth certificate, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It points to this spiritual identity, this relationship that's more fundamental than just a label. It's about who you are at your core. maybe who you're becoming in that relationship.
Wow. What an incredible deep dive into the surprising power hidden in something as common as a name. From Melchizedek, whose very name was his job description practically, to Zacchaeus, whose life turned on a dime when he heard his name called, and even wrestling with the complexity of a name like Judas, it's clear, a name is way more than just what people call you.
Absolutely. And I think the core insight, if we boil it down, is this. The name you're given at birth, that's the start. But the identity you live into, the character you build, how you act, how you allow yourself to be transformed, and especially how you understand yourself in relation to the divine. That's the name that truly matters, that writes your story. So thinking about all this, maybe a question for you to reflect on. What name or maybe what identity that God might call you friend, faithful, beloved, something else, what resonates most deeply with you right now? Who are you becoming?
And maybe one last thought to chew on, something provocative. If your actions, your character, your life could actually redefine what your given name means for people who come after you, what meaning would you want that name to carry?
Powerful questions. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep looking for those profound meanings, often hidden right there in plain sight.